Today we're going to talk about 3 planes that I think should be considered for WarThunder. While they may not be as combat ready as some of the planes in WarThunder, these planes I'm going to be talking about define a kind of role which is not really done yet in WarThunder. It's more of the flying sponge. The 3 planes I will be talking about have something in common. They're big and they're large, just like your mama! Bad joke. These planes are all based off real designs, and there were real versions. They're not prototypes. They just weren't as common as the main variants of their planes. Document wise, I'm not sure how to even go getting documents for these planes to get the real statistics and in-depth details. Might have to rely on secret documents, comrade, that are top secret and you cannot see, but trust me, they are precise to our measurements and not biased at all. I'm kidding, there is no Russian bias in WarThunder. Terrible joke again. Anyway, number 3, the PBY. And you're like, yeah, Hikes, we know the PBYs in WarThunder already. There's like 2 of them. No, wait, 4 of them. There's 2 American ones, 1 British one, I think, and a Russian one? Yeah, Russian premium, British, I don't know. I think it's British premium as well. I'm not sure, I don't remember. But anyway, PBY, Black Cats. They had a lot of retro refits on the PBY. And these retro refits included some smaller changes and some much larger changes to the PBY. For example, the blister pods on the side of the PBY were upgraded so that they had armor plating on the guns, increasing the survivability of the crew. And the forward guns were replaced with much stronger twin 50 cals for the turret gun, and in the nose they experimented with quad 50 cals or dual 20mm cannons. Not quite sure what they would achieve though, because it involves pointing the PBY in a certain direction, and the PBY isn't exactly known for being maneuverable. Will probably end up being a premium because it is not useful for most gameplay. I cannot imagine the PBY even getting guns on target on most planes. I mean, I would obviously give it a go, but I don't think it should be in the tree. I reckon it can be moved to premium. They can give it a fancy skin, the skin that they had for like the Black Cats. They can give it the little armor plating on the guns and the blister pods. Give it maybe the 20mm cannon, because I think that's a bit more stylish than the 450 cals. And obviously, the twin 50 cals in the turret. And, balance the BR appropriately and see how that goes. Out of the 3 other planes that I'm going to mention, this is probably the easiest one to implement into the game. I think it would be a nice change for the PBY to have a little bit more punch behind it. But this obviously wouldn't be at the current BR site. It may increase to BR 2.0, depending on how effective the armor plating is and how much firepower it's spitting out of the front now. Number 2, the Messerschmitt Me-323. Now, for anyone that's a World War II history buff, they're already like, an Armenian, you stupid cunt. It's a cargo plane. It's not a fucking bomber. Yeah, it's not really a bomber. It doesn't drop bombs. It doesn't know how to drop bombs. It can't even mount bombs under the wings. And then you're going to say, an Armenian. It barely has any defensive guns, which is true, because most of them didn't have defensive guns. And then the ones that did have defensive guns only had 5 sets of, 13mm guns. And they weren't really that useful, to be honest, because the whole thing's made of tinfoil. Less than tinfoil, it's actually just fabric. It's mostly fabric on a skeletal frame. Alright, history time, let's go back a little bit quickly. The first variant of this plane didn't have engines and didn't have landing gear. It just had skids to land on, and to take off it had to use like 6 rocket pods, which would drop after takeoff, and had to be towed by 3 other twin-engine bombers. Or was it twin-engine night fighters? I think it was more like fighters, but yeah, twin-engine fighters. 3 planes, all on the same runway, trying to drag this beastly plane up, and the idea was it to run one-way missions. They'll drag it up in the air, take it to where it needs to go, and this thing will glide in to its destination. It's kind of a bit wasteful as well, all that energy to get stuff from A to B. So then in the end, they actually decided to put wheels on the bloody thing. They took the skids off, added the wheels, and added 6 engines to it, so it actually became its own aeroplane. And when it was first made as well, it only had a single pilot. It only had a single pilot, and the first test pilots were complaining that, it wasn't twin cockpit. They needed a co-pilot to help them steer the bloody thing, because you had to be really strong to steer this plane, because the control surfaces were very stiff. So eventually they did, after like 100 models that were single pilot, they did make it dual pilot. Is that even a term, dual pilot? Dual controls, that's a term. But here's the thing, it could actually fit tanks inside it. Tanks, light vehicles, or 200 troops. And when you think about it, you can get maybe 200 of these things, which, Germany was planning. Maybe try and get 200 of these things to cross the channel, you can suddenly have a force of like 20,000 troops in England overnight. And you know what's going to fight them? Dad's army? It's going to take a bit of a while for the British army to mobilise against that kind of force. Anyway, back to WarThunder though. There is a variant of the ME323, which I think is the E-2WT. WarThunder. But anyway, it was designed to be an escort gunship. It was kind of their response to like the B-17, like, oh, look at your B-17, America, it's so fancy with all its 50 cals and armor plating and supposed survivability. Well, we can do better than that. And the idea of this thing was to be defensive. It was a plane designed to fly with formations of other bombers and be the behemoth tank. Wasn't that useful, but it did have a solid nose-mounted 20mm cannon turret. So, you know, it can swivel. Additional machine gun turrets in the wings. And I think it had 11 turrets in total. 1.3 tons of extra armor plating added to the general airframe. I mean, remember this is tin. This was like fabric-based aircraft, but now it's got, you know, over a ton of armor plating. There are 2 prototypes of this, and they were tested, and they could fly. So yeah, these were actual planes that did fly, and they were actually made, and they did fly. So that kind of counts. They weren't really used in combat scenarios, but WarThunder doesn't always pay attention to that kind of thing. So yes, it isn't really a bomber, but it fulfills a role that's not really done in the game, which is an aerial tank. Whether it would be too much of a bullet sponge, it would be annoying, or would be an amusing target to come up against, would be another story. I can imagine planes that aren't armed with, you know, 20mm cannons, or anything larger than, you know, 7.7 rounds, you're going to be fucked against this thing. Number 3. The Sunderland. I'm not really good at accents. Sunderland. Anyway, the Sunderland. A British flying boat, armed with loads of .303 Vickers machine guns, everywhere bristling with them. Well, not really, I think there was some in the front and some in the back. I think there was a quad turret in the front, quad turret in the back maybe, depends on variant to variant. I haven't pinned down which variant in particular, but anyway, they designed this bomber to be kind of anti-naval units, to be able to carry depth charges if possible, and they actually wanted to equip it with a 37mm cannon in the original designs, but they kind of gave up on that idea. What makes this plane interesting is that it's a behemoth, so it can tank quite a bit, it's a complete metal airframe. But the bomb bay I find pretty fascinating. The wings can only carry less than, I think it was 500 kilograms under the wings, which isn't that impressive. But they've got a special rack and pulley system that allows them to refit the wings with bombs from the internal bomb bay. They need to lift them up from the bomb bay to like where the wings are on the inside, and then they use a system to get the bombs to the outside, and then they can drop them from there. Which means that it can carry quite a large bomb load. It just takes time to refit the sets of bombs, which may not really affect arcade gameplay, but in realistic battles, reload times of maybe 30 seconds or something on the fly would be really useful for a bomber to be able to refit its bomb load to a limited amount, to whatever the internal storage was. Different sources have different amounts of bombs that were stored on the inside, so I can't lock down what that number is either. I also cannot lock down which variant of the plane will be most, you know, useful for WarThunder. But I can imagine this plane's role in WarThunder as a bomber that has to kind of stay around at a certain area to be allowed to drop its bomb load with a medium defensive rate for guns. Vickers guns are pretty much useless in WarThunder, they do nothing. Unless you got 50 cal, you're not getting shit done. But because of its durability, it is such a large plane. It is humongous, and with quad engines, it will take quite a lot to bring this plane down other than getting a pilot sniped. Or, you know, blowing off one of the wings. Emptying bullets into the fuselage will not do that much to this plane. Now, I want you guys to tell me in the comments below whether I'm being a complete fucktard by trying to invent a new category of bombers. Because yes, maybe the only thing that I said maybe was sensible was the PBY, which is the easiest to implement because the model's already been designed. The Sunderland may already be on the plans for WarThunder to be made at some point, which I would love, and I would love for WarThunder to take advantage of the internal bomb bay and its ability to refit the wings in flight. The ME323 is a very big if, because every current large plane in WarThunder has the ability to drop bombs. But this plane doesn't. It was designed as a cargo plane. But the combat variant that I discussed could be quite a fun plane to play in WarThunder. Or it could just be complete bullshit. Or it could just be very boring. Maybe it'll be too big and it'll be impossible to fit in the game, but I know their engine is very diverse. I mean, I don't think it's a problem of modelling, I think it's a problem with balance and whether this plane would be fun to fly. But the ME323 could be in the main tree, in my opinion. The Sunderland, I expect, should be put into the main tree. I think it is suited along with the rest of the British bombers. I think it will fit in perfectly into the game as it is at the moment. The ME323 though, I'm not sure whether that would be balanced to put it into the main tree, or making it accessible to everyone would be worth it, their time. It may be, I would like to say it could be an event, but let's be honest, it takes a lot of effort to design a plane and then lock it behind an event wall. Maybe it could be the next plane that they do for whatever tournament thing, dog tag system they do. Or maybe they could just put it as a premium plane, full stop. I'm not sure. So anyway, yeah, discuss in the comments below. Tell me your opinions. I'll try and reply to your comments all the time. Got nothing better to do. I only get like 20 of them. It's pretty easy to reply to comments when you don't have that many. But yeah, see you in the next one.
Like, comment and subscribe, or I'll break your f***ing legs.